Hey, welcome back, everybody. Man, do I have a guest for you today. Buckle up. I'm interviewing Mr. Darren LaCroix, who I'm gonna let him tell the story because I can't do it justice other than he came to our NSA chapter last year and blew us all away. I've heard stories. There's this story about him, or I've heard about him for a long period of time, and I finally got a chance to meet him, and man, is he good. So I'm not gonna give the good stuff away, Darren. I'm gonna let you do that because you can do a lot better than I am. But first and foremost, Darren, it's 11:30 here Eastern Standard Time. I'm talking to Darren, who's in Las Vegas, who is very early in the morning. He had to get another cup of coffee before we get started, which I appreciate. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and early morning to spend time with me on my podcast.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
He's got the voice for the radio. He's got the face for the stage.
It's all special effects.
So
I turn the bass way down. Hey, Barry White, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I've been working on my Morgan Freeman lately to see if I can have that soothing voice. I always said if Morgan Freeman would read an IRS letter, it would make you want to be audited by the IRS. It would feel so good. So, Darren, give everybody, tell me your story because it is incredible at the least.
Well, you're very kind. I grew up, parents got to go to college, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did know that I wanted to eventually be an entrepreneur. But I'm like, why am I going to college if I want to have my own business? So I went to business school, 4 years, Bryant College, Smithfield, Rhode Island, now called Bryant University. But I was really excited, and I decided because I couldn't really get a business loan right after college, having no experience and no money. So I ended up going with a franchise. So I bought a Subway franchise, and I was so dreaming I was going to be a multi-store owner, going to have 5 units, going to be a multi-millionaire, have everybody do the work for me. And man, I could, back then, Subway had 5,000 stores, literally, and they actually had a 98% success rate. I really got to screw up to be in that 2%. You got to be good at messing up. And honestly, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing Subway because I'm really not. I made a lot of bad mistakes and it didn't work. So I had the store for about 1.5 years. I sold it at a loss, and I just was at the lowest point in my life. And I just living at home with my parents. I still had the business loan, even though I had no business because I sold it at a loss, had the college loan, living with mom and dad. Woohoo! Dreams only in America. Only in America can you be an entrepreneur and earn less than minimum wage, and it's legal. So anyway, my buddy gave me this motivational tape because I was so down, and I loved it. It was encouraging and made me believe in myself. And I'm driving down the road, and I hear this man named Brian Tracy say, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? And I thought about it because I was at this such a open point in my life where I'm like, tell me anything, I'm in. And when I answered the question, what would I want to do if I knew I wouldn't fail? I was like, I would be a comedian. That would be the ultimate. I mean, making people laugh for a living, that would be perfect. And all of a sudden, this little voice of reason said, but you're not funny, Darren. But that wasn't the question.
Right.
It's truth, but it wasn't the question. So I just challenged myself, and I said, you know what? It wasn't a dream, but I said, what if Brian Tracy's right? So I forced myself to do it just once. And I decided, when I told my friends and family, they're like, you, a comedian? Number one, you're scared to talk in front of people. Number two, you're not funny at all, not even close. You're a nice guy. People like you, but that's because you shut up and you don't talk. And so I just, I realized in listening to his motivational tapes, Brian Tracy said, go to people who are where you want to be and listen to them. So I said, well, let me ask a comedian. Because when I told my friends and family, they compared me to Jerry Seinfeld, someone just thinking about it, to someone at the top of their profession. And that's not fair. It's
Right.
human nature. I get it. I understand it, but it's not fair to compare you and where you're at if you're just beginning a new skill set
Right.
to somebody who's one of the most accomplished person in the industry. You know, when you sit back, oh yeah, of course. Why would you do that? But in the moment, you're like, comedian, not you. Okay,
Right.
next, pick another
Right.
dream buddy. And so I went to this little comedy club, and I had never been to a comedy club in my life live at that point. I went to this little comedy club in Worcester, and I worked up all the courage I could to walk up to the comedian. Because again, I'm a shy, quiet kid who has no business being on stage, never mind talking to a comedian. So I looked up to him after the show, and he seemed pretty approachable. So it wasn't horrible, but it was still a stretch for me. And I said, "Hi, my name is Darren. I want to try this. What do I need to do?" And he asked me a question. He said, "Are you funny?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Good." I'm like, "Good? What do you mean good?" And he went on to explain that people who are naturally funny, like class clowns, your friends and your family, like that's one skill set around your family. If you handed them a microphone and put them in front of a group of 100 strangers, they couldn't make them laugh.
Right.
He said, that's a different skill set. But then he said, that skill set can be learned. And I was like, ooh, he gave me hope. And he said two things there. Number one, and this is for anything, but it spoke to me. He said, number one, you need to get the book. I'm like, book? There's a book about stand-up comedy? Well, of course, there's books about everything, but I wasn't thinking that way. So number one, get the information, get the book. And he said, number two, you need to go to open mic nights and watch other people who are just starting out. Well, duh. Now I would be comparing myself to someone else who's starting out rather than someone at the top of their profession. That made sense. Yeah. So I went out and I got the book. I read the book. I studied the book, went through the exercises. And I think that's one of the other problems for us as adult learners. I'm still guilty myself now that we think we know everything. And so we're not truly opened to new ways. And even though we say we want it, we have a problem, we have a challenge. But fortunately back then I was wide open. So I went and got the book, did the exercises. And then on Sunday night, I went to this little comedy club called Stitches right outside of Fenway Park in Boston. And I walked in and you could feel the sticky floor. You could smell the stale beer. And it was like, cool. It was like coolness. And I so didn't belong in coolness, but I was there. And I watched people go up for their very first time. And they were horrible. And I thought, I could do that. I could be that horrible. Yeah. These people are embarrassing. I'm like, I've embarrassed myself before. I have no problem with that. And so I committed that, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it just once, though. It wasn't like this dream. And I didn't think at that moment that I was going to live the life and become a comedian and then go on to be a speaker. But I just once, because I couldn't live with the regret of wondering, what if? Right, what if Brian Tracy was right? I'm in such a malleable state right now in my life. If I don't try this now, I'll live my life regretting. So I studied the book for 2 months. I went to Stitches every Sunday night for 2 months to be re-inspired by horrible comedians. And it was April 26, 1992, Stitches, Boston, Mass. And I went up on stage. I was so nervous. I was literally shaking. I have it on video too. And when I give speeches, I actually show a video clip of it, and it's horrible. And I can show it now if you want.
Let's make sure we get
translate, but
make sure give me the clip, and I'll put it into the show notes. People can watch it because I remember you showed it at the chapter. And I'll be honest with you, I got goosebumps. Because I remembered what it was like being at an open mic night and having that fear, having that intimidation, and getting up there in front of 50 people, whatever, and telling jokes and trying to make them laugh. It just gave me the good goosebumps, not the bad goosebumps.
The good goosebumps, not the bad ones.
Yeah.
Well, through the miracle of Zoom, whoops. Stop share. We're
going to see if we can get this thing played. Here we go.
anyone here live in New England? Yeah. I figured I had to get somebody to see it. Did anybody ever notice that every other small town in New England takes one little small historical fact, makes it the greatest event in the world? Sorry for my voice, like fluctuating a little bit. But a lot of towns are like this. I was doing some research, like places like Lexington, you know, the first revolutionary skirmish happened there. What was his name? I can't even think of his name. Obviously, he was real famous. Eli Whitney was in Westboro, you know, born in Westboro. I was doing some research and I discovered that the first dentist to use ether actually happened in Charlton, Massachusetts. And an interesting thing about this was he actually experimented himself. You know, nobody else had done this before. And he started with animals and then he used his own dog. And, you know,
Yeah, it was painful. And that wasn't even the worst part. There was a moment that I told you about, and where I was so nervous that what I was saying and what I was doing with my body, it was not in sync, because obviously when you're nervous, right, that's how it is. And so I was telling this one joke about Dr. Robert Goddard, who launched the first liquid fuel rocket in history in my hometown. And I was talking about the rocket because it only went 41 feet high. And I said the rocket took off and it went vertically, but I did horizontally with my arm. And I was just disgusted with myself. And I just reacted. I just like, shoot. That's not the actual word I used. Shoot. And everybody laughed. And I was like, what's going on? Why are you laughing? That's not where you're supposed to laugh, but I'll take it.
Right.
And as I walked off stage, one of the other comedians put his arm around me to console me. He's like, don't worry, man, it's just your first time. And I remember thinking, don't worry, it's just my first time. Did you see what I did? I got a laugh. I don't care that it was a mistake. I can make more mistakes. In that 5 minutes of time, I had one thing that worked. And even though it was a mistake, if I could reproduce that and get rid of everything that didn't work, I could do this.
Right.
And I just said, I'm in. I got every mentor that I could. I read every book that I could. And in fact, that's what my mentor said: stage time, stage time, stage time. Any day that you don't get on stage is a day that you don't grow. And I think for everyone in your conversations, trying to persuade people or educate people, we need to be better at it. And the more we do it, the better we'll get, but especially if we have some world-class tools to do that. So Stage Time University is now, because of that story, that's what I do, where I train people. But I love what I get to do. But here's the cool part, is that stage time is important. But if we're not trying to improve, like my mentor said, any day that you don't get on stage is a day that you don't grow. And I was like, what? I thought I had to be good to be on stage. And he said, no, you have to go on stage to get good.
Right.
And it's very different. And so I couldn't get stage time. You know, as a wannabe comedian, there's only three comedy clubs in Boston at that time, and there's 100 wannabes vying for those spots. So it was hard to get stage time. And that's when I found Toastmasters and NSA in a couple of years, or a year and a half later. And I found Toastmasters as a great place to make mistakes and get that stage time. I'm like, what do you mean? They're going to clap no matter how bad I am? Like, that's not like a comedy club at all. And so I just dove in, and I did both stand-up and speaking for many years. And then fast forward to 2001, I outspoke 25,000 contestants from 14 countries to win the World Championship of Public Speaking with a very funny speech. And I had a great coach, and it was the coach. I just did the work. But most people aren't willing to do the work or get a coach.
And you make some really good points throughout the story. Is one, you just don't become a world champion overnight. Two, you don't become funny overnight. And you epitomize. You've done the work. You've demonstrated that it takes every day. And so many times people want to do here, but they don't want to put in the work. Right. And they get frustrated when something doesn't happen because it, doesn't
happen quick enough.
Right. When you want to enact change, you have to take small steps. And Cody, you can edit
One
this.
of the things I love to point out is there are those people who are naturals, that
Right.
those 2% that are natural born presenters, naturally born funny people. Guess what? I hate them too, because for the
Right.
rest of us, it's work. It's
It is.
work. And then the other thing that frustrates me is people who have a natural gift, but it's good and they could be great or unforgettable if they'd just be willing to be more open and be a sponge, because they got those natural talents and they could ride on them and be better than most, but they could be unbelievable if they just got some world-class techniques in whatever industry they're in.
Well, that goes to a coach, and you know, we all need coaches, but also goes to
Even you? What?
I love improv. I mean, that's my love, and I have an improv coach, and we meet once a month. He's out in LA. He's part of Second City faculty out in LA, and we look at it from a business perspective. But he's inspired me that I should probably get up on stage. I've never been on stage from improv. I've done stand-up.
What?
But he's inspired me to be on stage. And I said, well, I guess at this point in my life, I'd be doing the assisted living circuit, which is fine.
No, there's always that one token old person.
Yeah.
That's you and me.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, look at the geriatric improv player up there. But here's the cool part. This is why I love Patricia Fripp, and I can't wait till I'm at her age, whatever that would be, because I can't wait to get away with the things that she can say.
Well, true.
See, if the old guy says something even remotely risque, it will kill. Peter, get up there. I'll join you. The two old guys.
I'm gonna hold you to. I'm gonna hold you to that now.
I'll do it.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Improv.
But we all need coaches. We all need help, and we all need to. And you said we need to be open. We need to be open to other ideas and basically park our ego. And you know what? And you make a point. There are some people who are really good, but if they want to be outstanding, they've got to take the feedback and accept the feedback.
Be a sponge. Be a sponge.
And ego gets in the way, and it doesn't allow us some folks to be that sponge. I like feedback, and I hired Judy Carter as a coach at one point to help me, and I sent her some footage, and I said, I want it straight between the eyes.
And I bet you got it from her.
I did. And when she was done, I said, thank you. And I didn't get defensive. And she goes, well, I said, I asked for the feedback. I can't get defensive if I ask for feedback. And if this is the way that I want it, she goes, you're weird. I said, thank you. I am that way, but I'm open to the feedback. Now, what I do with that feedback is my decision. But you see this all the time. People will ask for feedback, and then as you're giving it to them, they're being defensive about everything.
Yeah, they don't actually want the feedback.
Yeah.
They actually want the pat on the back.
Right.
Craig Valentine says, some people come to us for education, and some people come to us for validation. And I think more people come for validation.
Right.
And I was guilty of that myself. When I met my coach, let me just jump in on this super quick because it makes the point.
Yeah.
In 2001, I had been doing stand-up for 9 years. I was a speaker for 7 years. I think at that point I was 94. And so I thought I was pretty good. And in the Toastmaster world, I was like king of my club. I wasn't world class, but I was king of my club in the perfect bubble world.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I love Toastmasters. It's a great place to grow, but it's not reality, but we need that in order to be better in reality. So I thought if I just got a coach, so I joined this speech contest to work on the stories I was telling in my professional career. So I didn't join it to get the trophy. I joined the speech or entered it, I should say. I entered the speech contest to work on the stories I was already telling, to make them so good someone would pay to hear them. And that was advice from one of my comedy mentors. He said, Darren, take the stories you already have. He said, stop, because I was like that little creature from Lord of the Rings, precious, precious. I was lusting after that story that would be, in our world as a speaker, Peter, we want that signature story, that story we're known for. And so I kept trying to find it and find it and find it. And he said, no, Darren, stop. He said, take one of the stories you already have and make it so good someone will pay to hear that. And that was like a switch of the mindset, because I didn't realize there was a world-class process that you could follow to go deeper. I just thought you just told the story and you tweaked it a little. No. You got to dig deeper into the story. You got to find the right elements, put them together in a great way, and add dialogue and enhance it and show the emotional shift. I was like, what? I just thought a story happened. You recognized it and you reported on it, and it was wrong. So when I first met Mark Brown, who was the 1995 world champion and my coach, I was so excited that he agreed to work with me. And I really secretly, I said I wanted coaching, but secretly I just wanted validation. I just wanted him to tell me how great I was. And so I took the first version of my championship speech, because he had to write a different one at 3 levels. So this was, he helped me out right on the last level. That's when I met him. And I had about 77 days before the contest. So I drove with version 1.0. I didn't want to bring it ahead of time or send it ahead of time, because I wanted to see the joy and the impression on his face. So I drove from Boston to New York to work with my coach. And we were in this little corporate training center where he worked at Reader's Digest. And I was so thrilled. If you don't know Mark Brown, he stands about 6'2". He's got a heart of gold. He's a native of Jamaica, and he's got this beautiful booming laugh, like the guy from the old 7-Up commercial. And so I handed Mark the speech. I mean, this was the greatest speech in the history of Toastmasters. As then I handed it to him, I thought it was so good. You could hear choirs of angels. I handed it to Mark. Mark took the speech. Oh, Darren, we have some work to do. What? I did everything you told me to do. I wrote the greatest speech that I could write from the level I was at. But you don't know what you don't know. And it's that moment after I absorbed the feedback and got out of my own ego's way, I realized that if you're not coachable, there is no cure. If you're not coachable, there's no cure. No one can help you get to the next level.
And that's a great quote. And it's so true. How coachable are you? How do you look at coaching? And some people, to your point, they look at it as validation versus educate me. Tell me how I can get better. How can I stretch myself?
You got to be confident to say, rip me apart.
Yeah. And
mean it.
And mean it. And I was confident with myself, but I knew, here's what I knew. I knew that I didn't know everything. I knew in order to get better. You're
a man. We're supposed to know everything, aren't we?
We're supposed to, but when we're honest with ourselves and want to continue to get better, you've got to search out those folks who have established that level and learn from them. Some people say, you're really good. I said, well, thank you, but I still have a long way to go. Well, you've been doing this for 17 years. I still have a long way to go. I still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, it's a mindset thing. It's the as Mike Rayburn says, it's like the virtuoso mindset that you're constantly trying to become the best, and you'll never achieve it. But if you're not constantly trying to improve, you're stuck in a rut, and you're making the rut deeper by not picking up new tools, new mindset, new perspective.
Exactly. And this goes to anything that we do. Anytime we're trying to get better, if we're trying to become a better leader, you don't learn leadership in a workshop. You learn leadership and applying it every single day.
It sounds great in a workshop.
Yeah. And, oh, cool. I can do that. But lo and behold, it doesn't work that way because we got to put in the work. And I think a lot of times complacency sets in. We just don't want to do the work, but then we're not seeing any results. You can't
growth.
Or growth.
We might get some results, but not the true growth that we're looking for.
And so you went from a scary guy doing stand up, who your parents and friends thought you're not funny, to doing stand up for 9 years. You travel the country. You're a professional speaker, a world champion Toastmaster, member of the National Speakers Association. But the one thing I have learned about you is you don't stop.
What?
How many
That's not in my vocabulary.
how many
I
revenue
get exhausted and pass out on occasion, but the next day I get up and keep going.
how many revenue streams do you have?
82.
Okay, so and it started with one.
Now, for clarification, some of them are just trickles. I'm not a multimillionaire. Some of them, when he says that, and he says that because I did a program on multiple streams of income, and I looked at my taxes and my accounting, and I literally added them up. So a couple of them are like some MP3 that I created and tried to sell, and it didn't go well, and it's like $4.52 for the year. So just to be clear, some of them are trickles,
but they're there, and you continue to evolve, and you continue to grow and add new things. So you got the Stage Time University. I thought Darren had been doing podcasting for a while, but he just started a podcast about a month and a half ago, and the name of the podcast is
Unforgettable Presentations, where Mark Brown, my coach, and I, we interview some of the most unforgettable presenters. In fact, Peter, you were at NSA, correct?
Correct.
So we just interviewed Ja Jang, who was the rejection guy.
Oh, yeah.
What I learned from 100 Days of Rejection. By the way, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen that TED Talk, you've got to check it out. It's so insightful, so funny, so inspiring. And so Mark and I just released last week our interview with him. It was fascinating.
Yeah, he's got a really fascinating story, and I did 1 day of rejection, and I went, okay, that's enough.
I'm good. I've been rejected. That's not the point, though, Peter.
Right. If I want 100 days of rejection, I'll go back into stand-up. I mean, that was Rejection City, right?
I'll start dating again. Yes. By the way, I'm not married, so and I got no interest. Like, I'm on a mission. I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, well, 82 streams of income. You've got a boot camp coming up in March.
Yeah, I got one coming up in December and one coming up in March. So,
and those boot camps are.
So the one in December is called Unforgettable Presentations, ironically. So it's a 2-day event with Mark and me, live or virtually in Vegas. And then in March, it's my big event, which is called Stage Time Live, where my whole faculty is there: Ed Tate, Ford Sakes, Kevin Burke. And it's 2 days with a whole bunch of crazy speakers who want to get better.
Cool. And coaching and doing, but
yeah, we do live coaching. So we show people, like, everyone thinks, oh, here's what to do. But when you see somebody deliver it, and then you see a coach step up and say, okay, try this, this, and this, and then they do it that way, you're like, ooh, I wish more people would just see the experience of coaching. And anyway, I love what we do, and helping people help people.
And so when you think about coaching, and so if I'm thinking about my audience, and they'll go, well, I've got my continuing education
check off that box.
Yeah, that's
are you better because of it?
Right. Or
that's
are you
the question? Or
are you just collecting 8 hours of continuing education? But what are you doing to get better? And that's the challenge I leave my audience with is, okay, you finish this. What are you going to take away? What are you going to work on? What are you going to get better on? And how are you going to plan it? And I normally, there might be 1 or 2 people that'll take that actually serious and stick around and talk about it after the fact.
But that's what you were there for. You were there for those 2. Right. It's a mindset. You can't make people be coachable. You can't make people be a sponge. But for you and I, for what we do, just to have that initial intention to help people. And it's sad that more people aren't open to growth. They say they are, but they're not actually.
Why do you think that is? We say we're open for growth, but then we actually don't do it. Is it because of the demands of our jobs, or demands of corporate America, demands of family, or we're just naturally lazy?
I think all of the above. I think we're naturally lazy. And I think there's also, when you say get a coach, there's also bad coaches out there.
Yeah.
So if you've had a bad experience with one coach, that doesn't mean they're all bad. That means maybe you should have done more due diligence. Do you know Rudy Rudiger?
I know of the name, but I don't know of the person.
So the movie Rudy was created around his story, but
Okay.
he's like my hero. So I like stalked him until I could get to meet him, had lunch with him. It was like having lunch with a little kid having lunch with Santa Claus. I'm like, it's Rudy, it's Rudy. Anyway, he said one thing that I thought was brilliant. He said that people aren't afraid of hard work. They're afraid of hard work not paying off.
Okay.
And because sometimes they worked hard, but maybe in the wrong direction.
Right.
So as a result, they didn't get any results.
Mm-hmm.
And so they thought it's not worth it. But when you find the right coach, the person that you're open to, unfortunately, when we have something in our life that happens, like last year, I'm just being honest here, even though I have a staff of 4 last year, I literally had to pull my staff aside and say, look, guys, I made some mistakes. I've been trying to correct them. I don't know if I'm going to hit payroll next week.
Whoa.
And so if you need to get other jobs, I understand. And they all, some of them panicked, which I understand, but they all at least knew the truth, and I wasn't going to BS. And, it was scary. And one of my assistants said, why would you tell us that? I'm like, well, why would I not? Are you kidding? But I had let go. Like, I'm a hard worker, but sometimes we let go of the numbers. We don't keep track of the numbers and what's happening. And even though I have money coming in all the time because of my different streams of revenue, I wasn't paying attention to what was going out and what was coming in. And that seems so obvious to everyone listening. I get that, but we're not perfect. And so because I wasn't paying attention to my numbers, sometimes like that for me, this inciting incident happens that forces us to be open and coachable. So as a result of that, I became a sponge. I went to an event with Russell Brunson, who owns ClickFunnels.
Yeah.
And his team. And I just became a sponge again. And I was open and eager. And I'm like, I got to find a way. And through that mindset, I found a couple people who'd help me and coach me. And one woman who was still newer, but she was willing to sit down with me and just take a look at what I was doing. And she said, dude, you have this huge list that you've been building for years. You need to just do a webinar. So here's Russell's webinar format. Just go through that and start doing webinars. And I had nothing to lose. Well, I started doing webinars, and now it's my number one way of acquiring new students, and it works. But if it wasn't for that inciting incident, I wouldn't have been coachable because I thought I knew what I was doing. I got 4 employees. I'm, 400 students around the world. Yeah, but you can't hit payroll next week.
That's an eye opener. Everybody in my audience, if they were driving, they just hit the brakes when you said you couldn't make payroll. They just came to a complete stop, and that just But it also goes to the fact of you got to pay attention to those smaller details, and because we see it coming in, and we get the checks, and
we're like, oh, everything's fine. I've got money coming in.
I've got checks in my checkbook. I'm still good. I'm not out of cash yet, and I think that's one of the things that in our business, because a lot of speakers aren't fiscally sound or financially savvy, that they see it coming in, but they also don't pay attention to what's going out. And next thing you know, they can't make payroll, or they're broke or out of business, because this is a business.
Yeah. And I also found, so telling that story, like some people say, why do you tell that story? Well, it's transparency and it's truth. And if we truly want to influence others, we've got to be open and honest, in my opinion. And so it's just, that's why I tell that story, because I think it's important. It's important for people to hear the truth. And for all of us, we don't want to admit some of our mistakes and some of our shortcomings, and like SEO and keeping track of how much traffic is going to your website and what converts. And I hated Google Analytics because even though I love numbers, I just glazed over. So that's one of the reasons I moved over to ClickFunnels, because it's more Darren friendly, so I can see the numbers and keep track and see what's working. And that's what I needed to do, but I wasn't doing it because I thought I was good.
Well, it's interesting you should mention Russell Branson's book. It's Expert Secrets, right?
Yes. That's one of them. He's got a few.
That was you actually mentioned that at our chapter, and I actually went out and bought the book and became a sponge. And just soaked it all in. Now I haven't wrung myself out and applied it. It's always on that.
Oh, so you wonder why more people don't do that, and only 2% of the people who listen to you do that. But isn't that funny?
Yeah, and open and honest and transparent and vulnerable and all that other stuff. But yes.
It's okay. I get it. I love you, man. I'm a fan.
As we say in improv, yes, and it needs to be done. It's on the list, and you have 4 people. I have a staff of 5. Unfortunately, all 5 of them are in my head.
Well, fight it out.
Yeah, that's what they do.
But that's the thing. Like Patricia Fripp says something brilliant. She says, "It doesn't matter how much you bring in; it only matters how much you keep." So, there's an advantage. When I heard about Ford Sakes and what his payroll was, and I don't want to mention it without permission, but I was like, whoa. And I looked at my payroll and I'm like, my payroll is like, $5,000 every 2 weeks. I was like, whew. So all you got to do is take care of you and pay you. I'm like, what are you bitching about?
Right.
So shut up. No, I say that in jest because it doesn't matter what level you're at. It doesn't matter if you have 4, and you're like, oh, well, just get rid of one. Well, I have a big business. It's not quite that easy. Now, do I have to reevaluate? Absolutely.
Exactly. And closing, what else can you share with my audience that will motivate, inspire them to continue to do the right things, to continue to take those baby steps? A story that you have to help demonstrate that? What else can you share with them that they could go, I remember listening to Darren and he said this.
Well, a story and 2 little ideas that will answer that, I think, perfectly. Mike Rayburn, who we interviewed on our episode 2 of our podcast. Mike, he's a world-class speaker. He's amazing on XM radio. And he said for years, Brian Tracy was his personal mentor. And he said for years, he thought he was good. And he said, because he was self-taught. And Brian Tracy asked him, he said, have you committed to being the best? And he said, well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm playing, I'm booked all the time. And he said, no, that wasn't the question. Yeah. And Mike's self-reflectively said, well, no, I haven't actually committed to being the best. And Mike said that if you're self-taught, the problem is the teacher's not that good. It's brilliant. And it's right there, bam. So if you're not getting the results you want, then something's got to change. Your perspective has to change. You go for the perspective first, because the perspective leads to new habits, leads to new results. So if you're not getting the results you want, okay, pick one area. Like we can't do 12 things. We don't have time. I get time, but pick that one area that we want to work on. So I live in Las Vegas and I've lived here for 11 years. I'm not a gambler. I'm not a partier, but I love living in a convention city, being a speaker. So it was embarrassing to me when people would ask me a question or something, and I don't understand the game of craps at all. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Right. So one of my friends was at this fundraising party in Beverly Hills, and I was out in California, and she invited me to go to this, and she's like, I'm volunteering, so I got to run around, but here, come enjoy the party. So I'm at the party, and then there's a craps table there. And I was like, okay, I don't know anyone. I'm an introvert. I'm going to go learn craps. This is a perfect opportunity. So I'm sitting there at the edge of the table and I'm watching what's happening. And I'm asking some questions to, I think it's called a dealer, the person who rolls, but I don't even remember. And so I'm asking questions and I'm watching. And this little old lady kind of scoots up next to me. And she reminded me of my grandmother. She had these arthritis hands and she put them on the edge there. She was cute, but she had this scowl on her face. And she looks at me and realizes I'm not playing. She looks at me and she looks back. She goes, "Young man, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm learning craps and I'm just trying to understand. I don't even know how to bet." She goes, "Ah." And like 10 minutes go by and I'm still like asking questions and learning and trying to understand it. She goes, young man, if you want to learn craps, get in the game." And she wouldn't go away. She was just like looking at me. I was like, Catholic guilt. I'm like, oh, okay. So I put some money in the game just to like shut her up and leave her alone. And she was right. I don't remember her name. I never learned her name, but I'll always remember the lesson. You'll learn more from the experience. Get in the game. Whatever new skill set you want to work on, you're going to make some mistakes, but get in the game. You'll learn faster.
Wow. I did not see that coming. That boom. So
I didn't either.
Yeah.
This little old lady taught me one of the most important lessons, and it's the same thing that I teach. Oh,
get in the game. Darren, I can't thank you enough for taking time. I'm walking away with, I love when after an interview with one of my guests, I can walk away with stuff that I need to rethink and redo and reapply. And I appreciate that. I thank you for that, because I need to get back in the game on a few things that I have not. I've kept myself out of that game for full transparency, and I am going to get back in the game.
We all need the reminders, Peter, myself included.
Yes, and those reminders are very important. Once again, Darren, tell people how they can find you.
Well, if you want to check out our events, just go to stagetimeworkshops.com if you want to know about, either the December event or the March event. So, and I'm doing another one coming up for pastors as well, an online class, because teaching them better stories, better sermons. And so check that out if you like online learning, you want to stay connected. We have live calls every single week where we do live coaching inside of Stage Time University. So first week of the month, we work on content, second the week, stories, third week, humor, fourth week, delivery. So it's an online experience like you've never seen before. It's stagetimeuniversity.com. You can check out DarrenLaCroix.com. For people who really want to work on storytelling, just check out storytellingwebinar.com. It's free, and you'll watch Mark and me teach you the insiders of using stories to be able to help influence you and your decision or the audience's decision to come on and have your perspective or be convinced of what you're trying to convince them of. So check out storytellingwebinar.com.
Go check out all Darren's websites, and it'll be well worth your time and effort. And Darren, thank you so very much. Hopefully our paths will cross sooner than later. And
Cool.
I need to get to Vegas.
Hey, come join us for the event.
Yes, I may have to just put
We will be get in the game, Peter. Get in the game.
I'm going to get in the game.
I'll give you the Darren special discount.
I'm going to take him up on that, I believe.
We always got to, no matter what we do, even if we're good at what we do. And that's what I love about people who are the best. They're always rethinking and reevaluating to build on what they already have.
Exactly. And we need to continue to keep building. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And
let me know when we're going to do improv together on stage, the two old guys.
I think we should. I think we should convince them that we should do it at Influence.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, man.